Okay, so my name is Michaela, as Kate said, and as did I, and really wanted to talk about how I got to where I am after 53 years of being on this planet, nearly 54. So I put together this kind of slideshow, kind of timeline, and so I can kind of share all the stuff that's gone on in my life that I am now piecing together into this picture of who I am. So, and I'm calling it One Uppity Trans Woman's Path to Finding Herself because I'm freaking uppity these days. So, fighting for whatever I can and for other people too. So before I start getting into the slides I've got here, I have a couple stories that happened before I actually have any photo reference for. One happened probably when I was about 6 or 7, and my little brother was a toddler at the time, and my mother had gotten a dress that had been hers when she was about the same age. And I very distinctly remember that she dressed my little brother up in that dress, and he's running around having fun in it, and I was like really, really, where's my dress, And then kind of that faded away into the life of being, a boy. And another happened a couple years into elementary school. There was this incident where band classes were starting, and I'd just seen this program on TV about flutes and this thing, and it just kind of blew me away. And I went to my mother and said, I want to learn how to play the flute. And I was told that you can't, it's a girl's instrument. And of course, I didn't have the language at that time to counter the fact that I'd just seen this guy talking about playing the flute, so why couldn't I play the flute too if it's a girl's instrument? But you know what? I play a flute now, so I win in the end. So that'll bring us to our first slide here, which was, I don't remember what birthday this was, probably 8 years old, and I was born right around Halloween, so frequently birthday parties were costume parties. And this particular year, the theme was going to be a hobo party. And, so I don't even know who all these people in here, but at the last minute of that party, I could not dress up as a ratty old man. So here I am at my own party in a t-shirt and jeans. And now in hindsight, I'm kind of thinking that was like, yeah, I can't play the part of a guy. I just couldn't do that. But so that was kind of like the first real bit of feeling I didn't fit in with the world around me and what my role was supposed to be. And also around this sort of age, I was also getting bullied quite a bit. I don't remember what any of the bullying specifically was about, other than I would get beat up and stuff. Being a little scrawny kid. And, excuse me. So a few years later, as we get through grade school, bullying and all that stuff kind of continues. Was never athletic. I spent my 1 year playing Little League in right field, staring at planes flying overhead or looking at, clovers growing in the grass. And then puberty starts to come around, and that terrified the crap out of me. Like all of a sudden, all of these things that happen when your testosterone starts flowing, it's like panic city. But just I guess this is what you get to do. And it was also around the same time I discovered some women's clothes around the house and started trying them on in secret. And then sometimes, well, actually always in secret, but I do remember very distinctly actually wearing some women's underwear to junior high school underneath, my regular clothes, which kind of surprises me that I actually did that. This is probably just in high school. This is probably one of the only pictures of me that ever existed of me actually being happy opening clothes as a present. But I don't know if you can see the details on that pocket though. That's a pretty dang girly pocket on those jeans. But that was trendy at the time. And when I started between junior high school and high school, we moved from St. Paul, where I was in inner city schools, to out in the middle of nowhere to a high school that I knew absolutely nobody. And I remember first day of orientation at the school. We're all in the auditorium, and I'm sitting there in the seat, not knowing anybody, and somebody from behind me, says to me, "What are you?" It's just like, which just kind of, at the time I had no idea what they were talking about. I still don't really know what they were talking about, but it's like that kind of, in hindsight, kind of hit home, And along that time, it's like I had these like big fears of, well, am I gay? So I kind of, tried to figure out if I was gay or not. He's like, no, I'm pretty sure I don't like guys. Pretty much don't like guys at all. As it turns out, I'm gay. In fact, I am gay, but in a different way. And it's fears. Am I going to burn in hell? Because it's like I never. We always went to church and stuff, and so, it's like, is this evil or whatever? But so eventually, I completely walked away from the church and became a Buddhist. So I don't have to worry about burning in hell. This is my high school graduation picture, looking all serious and stuff. And I left high school and have never seen a single person from high school since, and that was 35 years ago. So, shortly after high school, I discovered, and this is kind of where my community. Oh, we have a visitor coming. My community that I really meshed with. I got connected to through Dreamhaven Books, which is a science fiction bookstore in Minneapolis. And they were in business in 1982, and they continue to be in business today. And I was a fan of science fiction, so started shopping there, getting to know the owner and employees, and getting then involved in the local science fiction community and conventions and things. And there, it was really a place where I could start feeling comfortable with other people, since it was a bunch of other people that were outsiders, didn't fit in one way or another with their life, or with the world at large. And it was also the first time I heard about a transgender woman, that was actually a thing. There was a woman, and she's still in the science fiction community in the Twin Cities, who transitioned in the 70s and is still a big part of the community. Excuse me. So, and I don't remember, at the time I knew who she was in the, but I never talked to her. I think that whole talking to a trans person was kind of terrifying. Now, at the time, at the time I started getting involved in the science fiction community, I discovered this man, Vaughn Bodie. Vaughn Bodie, more than any other person out there, really changed the direction of my life. And I can thank him for my eventual transitioning. He was an underground cartoonist, and he published probably what is the first underground comic book in 1963. He is best known for this character, Cheech Wizard, which has become a very big icon in like graffiti culture and all kinds of different things. The one thing about Vaughn Bodie is he was out as a cross-dresser in the early 70s. He was, as you can see, flamboyant, kind of hot. And as I got, and we will be revisiting Vaughn Bodie a couple times through this talk. Sadly, he died in 1975, so I never had a chance to meet him directly, but I've been involved with his family and the state since in the mid-'80s. So we will revisit Vaughn in the future here. So at the time I was also doing this, I started doing, Vaughn Bodie inspired me initially to start doing cartooning. So I started, some friends and I through Dreamhaven started a small comic book company, and we published 4 issues of an anthology series that I was a part of, and then some other things that we published. And at that same time, I was developing a transgender fashion model character. These were drawn in 1986, I think. But started developing this thing, and it freaked me out, and I had to walk away. But I still have the sketches. I still have the sketches of the character. So it's like, all right, this is kind of crazy. Then, hey, lo and behold, in my mid-40s, I actually start dating somebody. This is the 2 of us at my brother's high school graduation. She's the person that first introduced me to wearing makeup and getting my ears pierced. So I've had my ears pierced since 1986, and at the time was wearing makeup frequently with when we were out, and although never really cross-dressed. Although she has told me stories of me handing her breast forms at one point, say, I sometimes wear these, but I don't remember this story, but she very distinctly does. And to this day, she is a good friend of mine, a great supporter. I'm not sure why I put this one in here, other than it's a picture of me in boy mode looking relatively happy. And probably my favorite picture of me as a guy, because there's a little kitty in the picture. Fast forward there to the end of the 80s, and I met this woman, and at the time she was a TA in the Women's Studies Department at the University of Minnesota. And that was the time where the university just had their first Introduction to Gay and Lesbian Studies class. And so I took the class because she was the TA for it, and one of the first things we had to do in the class was to write our coming out story, or if we weren't gay or lesbian, our staying in story, as it were. And so I wrote, and these were all turned in anonymously, so nobody could associate anything with anybody. So you're pretty much free to say anything. And I started my paper with a quote from Vaughn Bodie, which was, I am a pop mystic transvestite in a one-man band. And apparently my paper caused quite the stir amongst all the other TAs. Who's the cross-dresser? Who's the transvestite in the class? And my girlfriend did not out me. At one point in our relationship, she said, "Hey, let's have an anything goes weekend for and I get to decide what we're gonna do." And so I dressed for her, and I think that kind of freaked her out, and eventually we ended up splitting up. But she also has still a friend of mine, and we see each other fairly. And she lives up in the Bemidji or Brainerd area, so I don't see her very often. But her and her wife are quite lovely people and very supportive. And it was around this time I started growing my hair out, and I was very much taking advantage of the idea of guys with long hair were like hippies, but that's not why I grew my hair out. I definitely grew my hair out because I wanted long, curly hair, and I was going to do it. So, you can't see it there. There's me up in a tree in Powderhorn Park. But at that point, my hair was probably the middle of my back. And at one point, my hair was literally down to here. And I had a lot of hair. So, but all because I wanted to be as probably actually the start of my poking around at gender, and sometimes pursuing gender fuck, which was kind of a trend back in the early 90s. So that was kind of me all playing in on that. This is a photo shoot of me that a friend did outside of he didn't live in the apartment building, but I lived in this apartment building, and he was in the neighborhood, and he wanted to do some photos because he wanted to do a painting of me, which I didn't include in the slideshow, so oh well. So literally this is the side of my apartment building, and this took every ounce of my strength to actually leave my apartment dressed. And even though I was out to most of my friends, I would cross-dress in front of them in the house and stuff all the time, absolutely no problem. But actually going out in public was big no land. It was too difficult. Around this time also is when we start dealing with Vaughn Bodie again, because I started doing sculptures of some of his characters that were done as like model kits, specialty model kits that people could buy and paint and whatnot. And also, because of that, I started going every year down to the Chicago Comic Con, which was quite a big show. And I met an artist named Guy Davis. Guy Davis had done a comic called Baker Street, which was a really cool punk retelling of Sherlock Holmes, with our main characters both being women. And in one of the storylines, there's a trans person in there, which is kind of cool. Guy and I kept talking about stuff, and we decided to collaborate on a piece. And he designed this character, Alice, and the Colchester Pussy, that I sculpted. And there's only a handful of these things in existence. But one of them's in my collection. I think a friend of mine up in Brainerd Bemidji has one. Neil Gaiman has one. And Neil Gaiman loved it so much, he actually contacted his editor to say, hey, you should contact Guy about doing this as a series. But Guy Davis didn't want to do it as a series. I did my part, got him this thing. But, he didn't want to go there. It wasn't until after I'd actually finished this that I found out that Alice was trans. So there's okay. And here's a lovely picture of me being an uppity trans woman, 25 years before. Actually, it's probably around the same time I knew you first met. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, we're talking mid-1990s at this point, 95. So yeah, this is my apartment building. You can't see it, but I've got all kinds of hair extensions in too, just to get even more hair in my frickin' head. This is at a friend's wedding, and I'm actually, wearing a oversized top and leggings out. And it's like, how did I not realize this? And one of the few times that I would actually go out in public was like on Halloween. So this is dolled up to go to a Halloween party. And at this time, this was, I've been living on my own for quite a while, financially doing all right. So I started looking for like breast forms and stuff, and at the time they were really freaking expensive. They weren't very good. But I would do whatever I could to get something and continue on.
Hi.
Balance
things out here.
As time went on, I kept trying to buy better and better breast forms and hip pads and stuff. Which then I moved into my current house, and here I think I actually have hip pads on and the whole 9 yards.
You look good.
Of course I do. So I lived in this house for a few years before I actually met my future wife, who I think some of you met a month or so ago. Anna is absolutely fabulous. She knew I was a cross-dresser shortly after we started dating, and had absolutely no problems with that. And our relationship was doing really well, so we ended up getting married. Oh, I don't know, there's a cute picture of me for some reason. I don't know, well, not sure why that's in there, and it's not in my little...
Because you're getting married, that's why.
Yeah.
Right?
So, yeah, there we are at our wedding. So, yeah, a number of years into our wedding, most evenings I would, come home from work and change and just be, me. And as time went by, it continued. And around this time, probably 5-10 years into our marriage, I started reconnected with Vaughn Bodie's family yet again, and I started sculpting some more characters. So the one here was made into a vinyl toy about 5-6 years ago. This one just came out this year. And the family has been, they're great people. I have a great relationship with Vaughn Bodie's son. Actually, just this weekend, I got some images of a couple pages of Vaughn Bodie's diary where he's talking about his gender things. So that was kind of fun, which we can get to in a second. Over the last few years, Anna tells me that she started to worry about me because I would come home from work and just kind of plop down on the couch and not do much anything. About a year and a half ago, I was poking around on the internet and I take this online gender test, and it was the results that I got from that test that kind of rattled my world, because it said that, you might not be happy completely in either gender role. Some therapy would probably do you good, as would partial transition. And it's like, what? What is this partial transition you're talking about? Because if we go, if we go way back to when I was first, poking at some of this gender stuff, 20, 30 years ago, the diagnosis for being transgender was so different. You pretty much had to be attracted to men and unhappy with your stuff and wanted to change the whole thing. Well, I wasn't that, so I never considered myself transgender. I started going to, I took this test, said, well, okay, I'll see if I can find a therapist to go to. I get online, discover the university has a program, call them up and make an appointment. Well, they don't have any appointments open right then, so it's a waiting list. So it's all right, put me on the waiting list. Wait. Call up. Yeah, it's supposed to be, a 3-month wait. It's 4 months now. What's up? Oh yeah, no, you're almost up. Wait. Call again. Say, oh yeah, we can get you in now. It's like, great. So this is actually about a year ago. It was a year ago in September. I had my first admission appointment with my therapist, where we did all of the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. Couple weeks later, I had my first real session where we go, she had the little diagnosis paper to sign, and right there on the paper it says gender dysphoria. So, oh, cool. Sign the thing, and we started. This is on a Monday. Tuesday, I have to sit and process. This is the Monday of the week of my wife and I's 15th wedding anniversary, which is technically on Thursday. So I have Thursday and Friday off. Thursday, my brother and sister-in-law are flying into town for a wedding that they're part of. So I take the day. I'm going to pick them up at the airport. So Tuesday, I'm sitting and processing what had happened on Monday at my first real therapy appointment. Wednesday after work, I sit down with Anna and say, hey, this is what's going on. She knew I was going into therapy for specifically gender things. And she says that, I'm here for you. I'm going to continue supporting you, and whatever needs to happen, happens. So you're awesome. Because I wanted to make sure I talked to her, because I really wanted to tell my brother this the next day. So I get up bright and early to go pick them up at the airport on our wedding anniversary, and on the way back to the house, I tell them that I'm transgender. This is when the emotions are going to start flowing. So, and there's like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then as we're hanging out that day, we were just talking stuff about it, and I said both of them are super supportive, just so awesomely supportive of me, helped me dealing with Mom, who, is kind of, she's come around. So, so I came out to our first family members on our wedding anniversary. So my traniversary is coming up too. The next day, which was Friday, we were going to go up to Duluth to spend our anniversary, but we had this wrench thrown into the works by we had to go to a funeral in the morning. So we brought all our stuff with us. We went to the funeral. The funeral's over, so we're going to head out. So I go into the bathroom to go to the, before we hit the road, and I look in the mirror, and it's just like, I can't do this anymore. The guy closed. So we went out to the car. We pulled the car around the back of the funeral home, changed. And that was the last time I wore men's clothes, which was into, this. I, threw on my bra, put on my pants and top, and hit the road. We spent the weekend up in Duluth. Wasn't misgendered once. Had a great time up there. It was a couple months later that I had my first appointment with Dr. Feldman and started on estrogen just before Thanksgiving last year. Had a really good holiday season with the family. The only Stickler was my brother-in-law, or my Anna's brother, who's an ass just in general, so that was no big surprise. He continues to be an ass to just about anybody, but the holidays were really good. Valentine's Day, we went to the lovely White Castle.
Oh, nice.
I'm wearing my newly finished transgender pride scarf. April comes along, and I legally go change my name and gender. Waiting at the DMV, and it was on Kate's birthday.
That's right, yeah. Parties.
We did.
Same spot, different reasons.
Exactly. Well, I mean, we co-reasons.
Co-reasons, right.
So I had put together a few little before and after pictures, which was it's like so much of my past was already so femme that it's kind of before and after pictures. I was like, eh. But I'm at least more comfortable looking now. This one was just a couple years ago. Then Liz asked me, "How do you get boobs without hormones?" It's like, a lot of tape. A lot of tape. And one last reconnection then to Von Bodie before we go to the very last picture I have here. They are now working on a documentary on Von Bodie, and I am going to be interviewed for this as kind of the happy ending to this. Vaughn died in 1975 of a mystical experiment gone wrong, as we like to say it, autoerotic asphyxiation. But since he's so drastically affected my life, a lot of the work I do, and also my transition, it's like it's going to be a neat little capper. But one of the things that's been discovered, or has come out to me anyway, is now this connection to Andy Warhol and the factory scene, because this friend of Vaughn's, Mario Montez, is this drag performer who really helped Vaughn with his own sort of dressing femme. She was involved in the factory scene in the mid-'60s, so before Candy Darling and Jackie Woodlawn and company. And actually, I refer to Mario as she because this is the only way I've ever seen her as dressed as a woman, but I think really she's a drag performer, not necessarily trans. So that was kind of a fun connection that's come through. It's like, hey, I can connect myself to Andy Warhol in 4 moves. And then I'll just finish with this last before and after picture of me. This is in Providence, Rhode Island. This is 2 years ago at the birthplace of H.P. Lovecraft. And this is about 2-3 weeks ago at the same location. In pretty much the same pose. So.
You must have grown taller because the statue got.
It's actually at 2 years ago. That was actually a temporary memorial, but since then they actually got funding to put in a permanent memorial. And you're not the only person to mention that.
Yeah,
She does look taller. Even if you took the money out.
It's
That
more
is true,
poof to my hair.
Yeah,
So
you stand taller.
yeah, very definitely.
You moved so fast.
What's that?
You moved so fast.
I did.
Yeah, you took this quiz and then you're changing your name.
Yeah, but
And
you see, you missed all the excitement of. There'll be a video version of this up
Okay.
on the internet, so you can sit and hear the whole thing.
Yeah.
So this is 30 plus years in the works. So
I get that. I'm in a rush now too, but I've been
No,
I've been waiting 58 years, so I get that.
Yeah. But it was.
You took this freaking quiz and then boom.
Yeah. But so much of so much of my life of the last 30 years was already had set me up to just walk into it.
Yeah, you already had some momentum going into it.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I didn't mention it in the actual proper part of the talk, but I literally started my transition 2 years prior to going to therapy. I'd started hair removal,
Well, me too.
and just like I can't do this, it's just like it's gotta go, and
Yeah.
but
But when you took the quiz, you were surprised to find out you were transgender?
well, it was more the quiz was more the seeing the partial transition. So like, what the hell is that? Tell me more, because it's like back in the early '90s when I first kind of looked into this thing, how the diagnoses worked at the time didn't feel like that was me. So I was like, I completely blocked off the idea of being trans
I see.
in my life.
Yeah.
So like, well, that's not me, But all of a sudden, here it is. With they've changed how the diagnoses work. That it's much more of a spectrum, and that you can be pretty much free to be. So
I'm sorry I was late.
Yeah.
I really loved everything I caught. So, yeah, I guess we'll have to watch the recording.
yes, and we'll have all the slides and stuff.
I hope the sound works good.
It should.
I've
It's
seen other
a
recordings
cool looking microphone, if nothing else.
Yeah, at least he stayed there. Like I've tried to watch other things that have been recorded. It's like I gave up because I think.
Yeah.
No, it's
With a microphone like that, I feel like I should talk like this at school. Just got
So, I mean, and I'm free to answer any questions anybody might have.
It was interesting that you had kind of knew a language going into this like 30, 40 years ago. Because where I was growing up in the suburbs here of Minneapolis, everything was like us, Nobody spoke about anybody that was gay or lesbian or trans or anything like that. And if they did, it was always amongst the adults. When I was going, you'd pick up and you'd go, what's that mean? What's that mean? But like I said, it's interesting that you had that language back then. And
Well, I think that a large part of that happened to be because I discovered Vaughn Bodie's comics, and so much of his work dealt with sex and various permutations thereof, and he was kind of out as somebody that was on the spectrum, as it were, and he told stories about it. I mean, he did comics about his life. I'll back up so you can see what he looks like in case you're not familiar with Vaughn Bodie. That's Vaughn Bodie. He was a underground cartoonist who passed away in '75.
he's got that Robert Plant thing going on.
Very definitely.
But I think that was just the style of the late 60s.
And actually, the person that took took this photo. I'm not sure if he took that photo too, but Fred Levy Haskell is a local photographer. He's part of the science fiction community here. So I actually own a couple of photos that Fred took of Vaughn Bodie that are currently living in the closet. I have to find a place to put them. So, but he's kind of hot. And quite probably would have been transgender. He apparently did go on hormones for a brief point in time in the early '70s, but didn't like what they did to his lower anatomy, so he stopped. But and his best friend was an artist named at the time Jeffrey Jones, who did a lot of cover paintings for paperbacks and did some comic work and stuff too. Jeffrey in later life transitioned. Jeffrey then went by Jeffrey Catherine Jones, and there's a lovely documentary on Catherine out there. So very interesting, much sad, a very sad life, but very, very talented person. So, and the two of them would cross-dress together. They both knew that Mario Montez, and that's kind of how they learned the tricks. But reading the diary pages that Vaughn had wrote at the time, it's like, and first wearing women's clothes was just like liberating. It's like, oh, so it just fell right into feeling comfortable. So it was kind of interesting.
Similar.
Yeah. Anybody have anything
So
else?
earlier on, you were kind of alluding to like you didn't seem to qualify, and I guess I read between the lines because you weren't experiencing strong dysphoria. Is that correct?
Oh, I think I always had the
Back then?
dysphoria,
So,
but
okay.
you know, in the if you were the gatekeeping that was out would be if you weren't attracted to men.
I see.
Right.
That was
So,
that was
just,
a actual criteria that
Oh yeah,
was a decider.
yeah. It's
Okay,
like, well,
it
I'm
wasn't the
not.
dysphoria like, because you were saying when you were going to Duluth and you looked at yourself and you wanted to, you said, I'm not wearing these clothes anymore.
Yep.
And that was it.
Yep.
You felt dysphoric way back then, but you just didn't qualify based on the standards
Yeah.
back in
I
the
mean,
day.
I was dysphoric right here.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people talk about it.
I don't know what you're,
Oh, this is me right. This is my birthday party where we were having a hobo party,
okay.
and the day of the party, I could not dress up as a dirty old man. I just couldn't do it. So I just wore my T-shirt and stuff.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see.
So,
Okay.
but I didn't have words for it at the time.
Mm-hmm. What were you saying, Kate? I'm sorry.
Sorry, and I don't know if it was the right place to put it in, but yeah, I've heard people speak, who did transition, like 15, 20 years ago, talk about feeling pressure to, claim, feeling dysphoria in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
or to, express, this pre-transition, like, same-sex attraction,
I see.
yeah, in order to,
Huh.
pass through the gate or, clear the hurdle. So, I think there was, a lot, more narrowly sort of defined
Yeah.
population in the medical.
I mean, they were confusing gender and
Yeah.
sexual, preference, and those are
It seemed
Right.
back in the day from all the stories like that you hear like about, for example, J. Edgar Hoover, and everybody's seen pictures
Right.
of him in a dress and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it just makes me wonder if that since we had so little understanding of gender back then, maybe he was trans and
Good.
not gay. So
Yeah.
something
Oh.
that you think of when you mention that, and it kind of popped in my head.
Well, and I skipped over a lot of people I had connections with, and when I was doing my, but as I mentioned knowing about this woman that was involved in the science fiction community who had transitioned in the 70s. Shortly, in the mid 80s, I was working for a frame shop, and we had the shop was up on Lake and Lyndale, and I had this customer that would come in. He'd bring in a lot of stuff to get framed, and at one point he commissioned me to do a painting for him, and he wanted a painting of two women, and he wanted one of them to be kind of butch, and he handed me a photo saying something like this. So I get him this painting. He picks up the painting and tells me that he had transitioned. He was a trans man, and this is in 1986 or 87. I met this person. Spilled their guts to me, all about the stuff that he wasn't happy with and all this kind of stuff, and I never saw him again. And that's happened to me several times over the years, where somebody that's trans tells me their story and then disappears. It's like, why are you telling me that?
Telling me that and then leaving me to sit with it.
Why me? But it's like I was saying initially, it's like that science fiction, fantasy, horror community was so good for me to connect with people that were accepting of me for whatever. It didn't really matter that anybody was anything. You're into this stuff, you're cool, And it was kind of the same with the punk new wave music scene too. It's like you like this stuff at school. And there was certainly a lot of gender fuck going around in that world at the time. It's like 1984, the Replacements released the song Androgynous, which kind of shook my world. And which I should have worked that into that story, but it's like
How long was it then that before you could get to see a therapist that it took?
5 months. Yeah, it was. I think I called in February or March to get on, and got put on the waiting list, and I had my first appointments in September last year.
Okay. That's surprising.
That it took so long, or
Yeah. I guess after I'd seen the gender doctor, I mean, they had a list of therapists.
Mhm.
I tried a couple and I found somebody almost immediately.
Yeah, she was going to the U of M, so the U of M.
they got a lot of people.
I was
yeah.
in the Park Nicollet.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. But the U place is really convenient for me. It's between work and home, and
Oh yeah, and they know what they're doing, and they got
Yeah.
everything under one
Yeah.
roof.
so all those years I did, actually this is relatively. I think I told you the other day, but literally within the last 3 weeks, I've actually started thinking about possibly doing the surgery. So
Top surgery.
bottom,
I didn't want to ask, that figured top was.
a little remodeling, shall we say? So, but we still got lots to think about there. And so, but it's all of a sudden because I had never been there before. It's like I think now that I'm feeling really comfortable in my life,
Yeah.
that it's like all this kind of baggage from the past is kind of falling away.
Since we're already personal, and feel free to decline. So regarding your dysphoria,
Uh-huh.
way back then, did you feel dysphoric about your genitals or not?
No,
No, me neither.
no.
I know it's not really like dysphoric, but it doesn't seem right. It's not like hatred, but it's like I'd rather it not.
Yeah.
But it's come around fairly recently for me that it's like I'd rather not, but I think some people are so dysphoric, even like children have been-
Yeah. Oh yeah.
little
Yeah.
children like trying to cut off their own thing,
Yeah.
So I never felt that way.
Yeah.
Before, and now lately it's like, oh yeah, I would like to be complete, just like you're thinking now too.
Yeah.
It's like, I would like
It was. I think there was a lot of roadblocks that were up. Mental roadblocks.
Sure.
Were there
Just
just
shut it
to
out, just sort of-
survive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
So.
you don't even think it's an option, so you just push it aside. Is that what you mean?
Yes, I mean I don't I haven't I haven't figured out all the past because a lot of I don't have a lot of memories of childhood.
Mhm.
There's a few things have started to fall into to become clear with time now, but I honestly can't say that I ever had a dislike of my bits.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden it's like things need to change.
You find yourself kind of looking back, trying to remember
Mm-hmm.
instances of when you were
Mm-hmm.
displayed.
Yep. And
I almost kind of searching my mind because I don't remember a lot. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And that's something